So by the time we get to Francis Galton in the late 19th century, of course, related to the Wedgwoods, the industrial class, to the Darwins, to the Huxleys, we see this alchemical brewing of this family itself that is the front PR piece of the oligarchical agenda here. But Galton would say the important thing is to separate the superiors from the inferiors. It's both a Platonic scheme of separating the classes, but it's done as Plato intended it to through the Kabbalistic teachings of a design for ascension to separate the messianic class from the herd. And we see that Galton's ideas of inferior, this wasn't just some fad or didn't just accidentally happen to catch on. The people that were in the Rosicrucian Freemason societies, the people that were embedded in the industrial class and the moneyed banking class pushed these ideas, and the installation of all the leaders supported this, including Roosevelt, Hoover, Churchill, Hitler. In fact, there are no dominant characters when we see in World War I or World War II that weren't hardcore proponents. So we got to get rid of this left right ideological. The one thing that they all had in common is they were gung ho about eugenics and the policy that would follow from that, a massive separation of the inferiors from the um, the herd again. And why did they get so excited about this? Because this is part of their great work. The facade of this is we have, you know, the Soviets and communism over here and fascism over here. This is all window dressing to create the conflict that's necessary for that alchemical brew to take, you know, to turn lead into gold, to separate that one class that was to be the superior and ultimately the messianic class, to take them into their grand scheme of ascension that, as we will see, would ultimately involve the beckoning of other ancient entities. Strange, I know. But Galton said, this will be the new religion. We will separate the past. Darwin severed it from these, you know, severed Western culture from its suspicions, and now we are enlightened, and we're going to follow this new science. It it it's still a theory. It still remains as a theory. It still lacks any evidence, but the word science is repeated over and over and over. Science from the old world. And what I would like to take note of right now is when we just, and again, when we go from the lunar society and the dominant banking and industrial classes that were there representing the germ of this seed, waiting for the time to bring it to the fore of the public imagination in the 19th century. And I want us to think briefly about who attended the 1912 International Conference on Eugenics and the 1921 Conference on Eugenics. So you're getting a eugenics conference right before World War I and in between the war periods. And who was meeting at this conference? Again, it was the dominant political, economic, social, and educational elites of the planet, in particular of the American, Anglo-American empire. And the list could go on and on. It's headed by Major Darwin. Again, you're going to get all the relatives there, the Wedgwoods, the Huxleys, the Prime Minister of England, Churchill, the Bishop of Oxford, Chief Justice, uh, both of the US Supreme Court and one of the key justices of the English Supreme Court, the German Vice President, um, the Governor of Pennsylvania, the President of Harvard University, the President of Columbia University, Alexander Graham Bell. And this is just some of the people. So are these are not people of note. These are the key players that sort of resolved the issues of World War I and would build the world system after World War II. So all those same figures involved there would be again involved in 1926. And you know, you can add to the list dominant U.S. military generals, chief psychologist of the American Psychological Association, president of the U.S. Um, Teachers College at Columbia, on and on and on. And I think what's particularly important is you get people like the economist um, John Maynard Keynes, who is big into eugenics. So, I mean, there's nobody of note that's left off this list. John Maynard Keynes, who of course would set up the post-world, the New World Order system, the Bretton Woods system, IMF, World Bank. Um, and again, you would need these systems to enact the plan of eugenics through Planned Parenthood and environmental degradation, through the World Health Organization, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. And again, it's just perfect. The World Bank purports to get countries out of debt and up on their feet. Their track record is zero in the last 60 years. And in fact, they've enslaved most of what we often call the underdeveloped world. They've literally enslaved it, put in all their crony rulers who always roll out their Planned Parenthood eugenics agenda. Again, we could say this about the International Monetary Fund, UNESCO, training people to go around the world and work in Planned Parenthood, sterilization, contraception, etc. It's one big organ, the Bretton Woods New World Order system, that was really created to advance this esoteric agenda. And if you need any other proof, the esoteric roots are, from Rosicrucianism to Freemasonry